The Parable of the Sower, Gospel of Matthew, chapter 13, verses 3 to 9. Behold, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell by the roadside, and the birds came and devoured them. Some fell on stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. Some fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. But others fell on good ground and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Gospel of Matthew, chapter 13, verses 3 to 9. Explanation of the parable. The parable of the sower symbolizes the various ways people respond to the Word of God. The sower in this story represents Christ or anyone who brings the teachings of the kingdom of heaven. The seed is the Word of God, and the different types of soil symbolize the conditions of the human heart and mind. The seed that fell by the roadside represents people whose hearts are closed to the truth. They hear the Word, but they do not understand it, and the devil quickly snatches it away. The seed that fell on stony places symbolizes those who receive the Word with joy but have shallow faith. They fall away easily when faced with difficulties. The seed that fell among thorns refers to people whose faith is choked by worldly worries, the pursuit of wealth, and pleasures. The seed that fell on good ground represents those who not only hear the Word but also live according to it, bearing spiritual fruit. The main idea of the parable is that the acceptance and effectiveness of the Word of God depend on the condition of the human heart. Only those who are open to the truth and willing to follow it can bear fruit in their lives. The parable also touches on the theme of free will. Each person has the choice to be open to the truth or reject it. This freedom makes each of us responsible for the spiritual fruits we produce. Application in life. The parable of the sower reminds us of the importance of preparing our hearts to receive the truth. For example, a person might hear an inspiring sermon, but if they are preoccupied with worries and distractions, they will quickly forget what they heard. It is essential to consciously create space for reflecting on spiritual values. Personal example. There was a time in my life when I was consumed by career advancement and material goals. Every Sunday, I attended church, but the word I heard did not take root because my thoughts were constantly occupied with work. Only when I recognized the need for change and began to set aside time for prayer and reflection did the word start to bear fruit in my life. Peace, joy, and new relationships with those around me. Another example. A close friend of mine struggled for years with an internal conflict. She believed that spiritual values were incompatible with her modern lifestyle. However, after a serious illness, she began to reflect on the meaning of life and started reading the Bible. Soon, her heart became good soil. She found peace and harmony, which positively impacted her family and career. Modern examples. The parable of the sower is just as relevant in our time. Let's consider a few examples. Social media. People often read motivational posts or watch videos with sermons, but a few minutes later, they switch to entertaining content. This is like the seed that fell by the roadside. The information doesn't have time to take root because attention is quickly diverted. The pursuit of success. Many people today are so occupied with their careers and finances that spiritual values take a back seat. Such people resemble the seed that fell among thorns. For instance, a successful businessman might be inspired by the idea of helping others, but constant busyness and stress prevent him from acting on his intentions. Personal development programs. Those who consciously work on themselves, reflect on what they hear, and apply it in their lives are like good soil. For example, a person who regularly meditates and studies spiritual texts begins to see fruits in the form of harmony and achievements. Raising children. Parents who invest time and effort in the spiritual upbringing of their children are like sowers. If a child grows up in an atmosphere of love, support, and faith, their heart becomes good soil for accepting the truth. Conclusion. The parable of the sower is a reminder to each of us about the necessity of working on our inner state. We choose what kind of soil we will be, barren or fertile. Only conscious striving for spiritual growth can yield true fruits such as peace, joy, and love. This parable also teaches us patience. Just as the sower does not immediately see the fruits of his labor, spiritual growth requires time and effort. The key is not to give up and to keep sowing good seed, even if we don't see immediate results. Psychological analysis. From a psychological perspective, the parable reflects different stages of processing new information. For example, by the roadside, this represents resistance to change. A person is not ready for new information because their mind is occupied with old beliefs or fears. Psychologists call this cognitive rigidity, the inability to adapt to new ideas. Stony ground. This stage is characterized by emotional enthusiasm without deep understanding. People become inspired by an idea but are not prepared for the challenges that come with implementing it. This is typical of people with low stress tolerance. Among thorns, this describes internal conflicts. The desire for spiritual growth clashes with habitual patterns of behavior, such as the pursuit of comfort or material goods. This reflects the issue of priorities, where spiritual development is overshadowed by external goals. Good soil. This is the result of personal effort. A person undergoes internal transformations, sheds unnecessary beliefs, and becomes open to change. In psychology, this is called a state of self-actualization, when a person achieves harmony between their inner desires and external circumstances. Additionally, the parable can be connected to cognitive behavioral theory. Our thoughts are the seeds we plant in our minds. If these thoughts are positive and constructive, they lead to harmonious actions and fruitful results. However, negative attitudes can become birds or thorns that hinder our development. Final reflection. The parable of the sower remains timelessly relevant. It teaches us mindfulness, patience, and the importance of working on ourselves. Every person can become good soil if they put in the effort and open themselves to spiritual growth.